A reading from Isaiah. Surely he has borne our infirmities and carried our diseases, yet we accounted him stricken, struck down by God and afflicted. But he was wounded for our transgressions, crushed by our iniquities. Upon him was the punishment that made us whole, and by his bruises we are healed. All we like sheep have gone astray. We have all turned out to our own way, and the Lord has laid on him the iniquity of us all. He was oppressed and he was afflicted, yet he did not open his mouth. Like a lamb that is led to the slaughter, and like a sheep that before its shearers is silent, so he did not open his mouth. By a perversion of justice he was taken away. Who could have imagined his future? For he was cut off from the land of the living, stricken for the transgression of my people. They made his grave with the wicked, and his tomb with the rich. Although he had done no violence, and there was no deceit in his mouth. Yet it was the will of the Lord to crush him with pain. When you make his life an offering for sin, he shall see his offspring, and shall prolong his days. Through him the will of the Lord shall prosper. Out of his anguish he shall see light. He shall find satisfaction through his knowledge. The righteous one, my servant, shall make many righteous, and he shall bear their iniquities. Before I will allot him a portion with the great, and he shall divide the spoil with the strong. Because he poured out himself to death, and was numbered with the transgressors, yet he bore the sin of many, and made intercession for the transgressors. The word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. Psalm 91. Because you have made the Lord your refuge, and the Most High your habitation, there shall no evil happen to you, neither shall any plague come near your dwelling. For he shall give his angels charge over you, to keep you in all your ways. They shall bear you in their hands, lest you dash your foot against a stone. You shall tread the lion and adder. You shall trample the young lion and the serpent under your feet. Because he is bound to me in love, therefore will I deliver him. I will protect him, because he knows my name. He shall call upon me, and I will answer him. I am with him in trouble. I will rescue him and bring him to honor. With long life will I satisfy him, and show him my salvation. A reading from the book of Hebrews. Every high priest chosen from among mortals is put in charge of things pertaining to God on their behalf, to offer gifts and sacrifices for sins. He is able to deal gently with the ignorant and wayward, since he himself is subject to weakness, and because of this he must offer sacrifice for his own sins as well as of those for the people. And one does not presume to take this honor, but takes it only when called by God, just as Aaron was. So also Christ did not glorify himself in becoming a high priest, but was appointed by the one who said to him, "You are my son, today I have begotten you." As he says also in another place, "You are a priest forever, according to the order of Melchizedek." In the days of the flesh, Jesus offered up prayers and supplications with loud cries and tears to the one who was able to save him from death, and he was heard because of his reverent submission. Although he was a son, he learned obedience through what he suffered, and having been made perfect, he became the source of eternal salvation for all who obey him, having been designated by God a high priest according to the order of Melchizedek. The word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. The Gospel of our Lord according to Mark. James and John, the sons of Zebedee, came forward to Jesus and said to him, "Teacher, we want you to do for us whatever we ask of you." And he said to them, "What is it you want me to do for you?" And they said to him, "Grant us to sit, one at your right hand and one at your left, in your glory." But Jesus said to them, "You do not know what you are asking. Are you able to drink the cup that I drank, or be baptized with the baptism that I am baptized with?" They replied, "We are able." Then Jesus said to them, "The cup that I drank you will drink, and with the baptism with which I am baptized you will be baptized. But to sit at my right hand or at my left hand is not mine to grant, but it is for those for whom it has been prepared." When the 10 heard this, they began to be angry with James and John. So Jesus called them and said to them, "You know that among the Gentiles, those whom they recognize as their rulers lord it over them, and their great ones are tyrants over them. But it is not so among you. But whoever wishes to become great among you must be your servant, and whoever wishes to be first among you must be slave of all. For the Son of Man came not to be served, but to serve, and to give his life a ransom for many." The Gospel of the Lord. Praise to you, Lord Christ.
May the words of my mouth and the meditations of our hearts be acceptable before you, O Lord, our rock and our Redeemer. What we just heard in the Gospel of Mark is in many ways rather fascinating to me. James and John come and ask Jesus that he grant them whatever they ask, and then he asks them, "What is it that you want?" And then they both say that they would like to sit at his right and left hand when he comes into his glory. So when I was reading this lesson and getting ready for the sermon, I became, I think, perhaps a little bit on the over-reflective side and began asking myself a question. A question that I think many of us do throughout our lives, which has to do with where do we find our meaning and where do we find our purpose in life? What is it we really want? What is it that we believe we want that is going to fulfill that understanding of where our sense of meaning and purpose and value, where that is located? Because I think in almost a naive way, and at the same time innocent and wonderful way, this is kind of what James and John were after. They want to be as close as they can be with Jesus. And, you know, I've heard many sermons where we focus on that they want power by being able to sit at his left and right hand. But interestingly, in this gospel, Jesus does not rebuke them. Who he rebukes are the 10 that get angry at them for having asked that. So backing up and wondering in my own personal way, what is your purpose? What is it that you're really wanting from life? I I recalled a moment when before I went to seminary, my mom had come down to visit me in Atlanta. And we were wrestling with the fact that I was about to go off to seminary. And only as a parent can do, she took me aside and she said, "Chris, I'm so proud of you and I'm so happy that this is your vocation, but I have a very, very deep concern." And I was surprised. And I said to her, "Well, Mom, what is that concern?" And she said, "I'm afraid it's going to break your heart." And I've carried that with me now for almost close to 40 years. And as I reflect upon that, somehow or another, my mother's premonition or her concern, I think, was coming out of a place that is very similar to the place we hear Jesus respond in this gospel. You're not really aware of what it is you're asking me. Are you able to drink the cup that I drink? Are you able to be baptized with the baptism with which I am baptized? And of course they say, "Oh yes, we are." And his response is, "And indeed, you will drink that cup. And you will go through a baptism that is like mine." In much the same way that if I were to converse with my mom today, I would say, "Indeed, my heart has been broken many, many times." But I think that is in many ways the heart of this purpose, of this vocation, of this being fully human, of trying to live a life that is literally as inching up as close as one can to that of the divine. And I think it's one of those times where I have to be as honest and not fluffy, not overly emotional about this, but to be real. That part of the depth of our human life, finding the divine within us and around us, has to do with a willingness to be completely vulnerable, a willingness to be broken. And that, unfortunately, has become way too popular of a word. But in so many words, what Jesus is saying is when you are my followers, when your life is desiring to become like mine, you must learn to give and to live and not count the cost. And I bring this up because there is a very, very beautiful prayer that was written by St. Ignatius of Loyola, one of the three founders of the Jesuits. He lived at the end of the 15th century and into the mid-16th century. And this prayer, the translation I have goes like this: "Lord, teach me to be generous. Teach me to serve as you deserve, to give and not to count the cost, to fight and not be afraid of being wounded, to toil and not to seek rest, to labor and not to ask for reward, except to know that I am doing your will. That is a profound prayer that I wish we could all carry with us. And from there, it reminded me of Frederick Buechner's whole notion of what constitutes a vocation. And I'm just going to give you his one sentence. The place God calls you to is the place where your deep gladness and the world's deep hunger meet. That is where you will find your true vocation. Where your deep gladness and the world's deep hunger meet. And so I hear this, in fact, all of these lessons, this, what we heard from Isaiah, what we heard from Hebrews, and this image of Christ, of Jesus' vocation as the Son of God, and him handing that over to us as we have it in the Gospel of Mark, so that we too might be invited into that life. Ultimately, I think we have to learn to give and not to count the cost. And so I go back to my broken heart. Most of the time, my broken heart has been over the loss of people. And that is common to all of us, not common to someone with a collar around their neck. But you know, the last word for me in every single one of those occasions has been that I wouldn't have traded the love that I had for this other person or vice versa. I wouldn't trade the pain or the grief for not having had that. I can't think of a single circumstance. And you can take that so far beyond grief. You can turn it into something, what is it you really care about? And it can be that you are passionate about the environment. It can be that you are passionate about justice. It could be that you are passionate about creativity. It could be that you are passionate about X, Y, and Z. And where you see that being threatened or diminished, if your passion is there, if that's what brings you joy and you see that as the deepest needs and hungers of the world, then by all means go for it. Can I be in your presence, God? And there I think we will. Because I think the antidote to living a life that is devoid of purpose and meaning and value and God, the antidote to all of that is, in fact, what Jesus is teaching today. The antidote is in becoming servants, where we actually don't believe ourselves to be above and beyond others, but that our hearts, our lives are engaged with each other, including the stranger. So I end with my only thought. The cost of it is worth it all. It doesn't count, it doesn't matter. For ultimately, the cost is all and everything. It's where we find ourselves most profoundly human. Amen.